And so instead of using it's becoming quite a common thing these days for artists to reach out to their fans to ask them to finance their music. And there are these websites that are set up to do that, like Pledge Music and Kickstarter, but I decided to do it on my own, through my own website. And the response was amazing. People were so generous. I've got this really committed, group of fans who really believe in what I do, and they follow, this is my 4th album, and so there's people who've been following me for years, and the response from them was just amazing. So we raised the money that we needed to release the record.
That must be great, the sort of the reward of you're doing something right, if you see what I mean. If the fans love it, you feel you're doing something right.
Yeah, definitely, and especially when they hadn't even heard anything that was on the record. I didn't give them any songs that we'd recorded yet, because it was still it was nearly finished, but it was still in production. And so people, just on the strength of knowing me or knowing my music in the past, basically put their hand in their pocket and gave us money, and it was amazing. I was actually getting donations of £1,000 from complete strangers, and people who must have seen me at gigs, because I've done a lot of touring, and I've obviously been seen by quite a lot of people, and yeah, it was quite overwhelming actually. The response from people was wonderful.
Yeah, how long did it actually take to record the actual album? Because it's 10 tracks. It's quite a decent sized album, isn't it?
Well, we've actually been making it really for a few years, in that we recorded most of the vocal parts and the guitar piano parts and at our place actually, and then we sent when Nigel Butler, the producer, got on board, we sent him those parts, and he basically made the album from that in his studio, and it took him about 3 months to do the 10 tracks.
Really?
And it was an amazing process, because I wasn't actually very well at the time, so I wasn't in a sort of state to be able to go into a studio and do your normal kind of recording routine. And so he was making these tracks and sending them through, and I was just so excited hearing what he was doing, because I've been wanting to work with him for years. He's actually one of the producers who works on X Factor a lot, and he's worked with everybody from Tom Jones to Robbie Williams and K.D. Lang and all kinds of people. And whenever I've done an album, he's never been available. And this time, the timing was just right, so he was available. So it was so exciting to be working with him.
Because the album's called Bird Inside a Cage. We'll come back to that in a little while. Would you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself? Because a lot of people have probably never heard of Emily Maguire.
Yeah, well, I'm a singer-songwriter. I was classically trained as a child on instruments, so I learnt the piano when I was really, really young, and I played cello and so on. But I didn't get a guitar until I was 21, and I was ill for quite a long time, and so I got a guitar to pass the time and started writing. And so I spent quite a few years sort of in my bedroom writing songs, and then started, when I got better, I started playing them, and I ended up going to Australia and made my first record out there, my first 2 albums actually out there in the bush. I spent 4 years living out in a shack made out of recycled wood and tin and potato sacks out in the Australian bush. Yeah. And yeah, so I made my first 2 albums out there, and then I ended up back in the UK doing some amazing tours with people like Don McLean and Eric Bibb and people like that, and I got quite a lot of support from Radio 2. So I made my 3rd album in the UK, and 2 songs from that were playlisted on Radio 2. And then since then I've carried on doing gigs, and I'm making now my 4th album, which is just about to be released. That's potted history.
That's okay. I mean, you said you were unwell. I think you were a little bit more than unwell. Do you mind talking about it? Or?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I had when I was a teenager. I was in a car crash, and it triggered this illness called fibromyalgia pain syndrome that I had for quite a long time. And I was on walking sticks, and I wasn't able to work, and I was sort of stuck at home, and that's why I, ended up writing songs. So the illness actually became a complete blessing in disguise. But then since then, I've also actually I got better from that, but I actually got bipolar disorder, which I sort of have to live with. And that, again, you know, there's an upside to that in that a lot of the creativity that I have comes from that. And a couple of years ago, I actually published a book called Start Over Again, which was all about the kind of account of dealing with bipolar disorder and the kind of, you know, the upside as well as the downsides of being a musician and living with that. So, so that's my sort of background.
Did you find the sort of illness, without to keep dwelling on it, did you find that sort of inspired you to sort of create and write and play and all that sort of thing? It gave you the time? Yeah,
exactly, definitely. I mean, when I had the fibromyalgia, that was you know, I couldn't go to university, I couldn't work or anything, and I was in a lot of pain all the time. And so, you know, I kind of knew if I turned on daytime TV, I was sort of finished. I had to find something to, you know, pass the time and distract myself from it. And I actually the reason I got a guitar in the first place was because I was mad keen on Bob Marley, and I just really wanted to be able to sing his songs. So that's why I got a guitar. And then it was a few months later that a friend sort of suggested that I might write a song. And I've always been really into poetry and words and books and that. So it was just a bit of a revelation to discover I could combine my love of music and my love of words into writing songs. So, and as I said before, you know, suddenly this illness was a complete blessing in disguise because I had all this time on my hands. And so I wrote and wrote and wrote. I had by the time I came to make my first album, I already had over 100 songs that were written. So I had a lot of material.
Some unbelievable amount of songs. So would you say Bob Marley was your biggest influence then?
Well, I was pretty obsessed with his songs for a long time. I think there was a few years in my teens when I literally listened to nothing but Bob Marley. But I also, the first sort of singer-songwriter I suppose I really got into was Tracy Chapman.
Oh yeah, Fast Cars.
Yeah, when that album came out, I just thought it was just so wonderful. And then I started listening to people like Suzanne Vega. And then later on, I got into listening to Joni Mitchell, but I've always had very eclectic taste in music. Actually, I suppose because I was brought up actually with classical music, and I still listen to that sometimes. And you know, so I then got into kind of rock, and I got into funk, and I got into, you know, sort of a bit of pop music and a bit of folk music, and so I've got, you know, very wide musical taste.
Yeah, that's good. Like I admire people who've got a good musical taste. There are some people who are sort of very much, I only like jazz or I only like this, and you know they're missing out on so much good stuff.
Yeah.
So much good stuff. I mean, I must admit, I live in the sort of 70s and 80s myself. Yeah. Anything beyond 1990, I find a little bit in a foreign language, but we won't go into that one. So you then, obviously, once you got better, you said you went to Australia.
Yeah.
What made you actually go to Australia?
Well, I just had a probably really bad breakdown, actually, and I'd been in hospital and from the bipolar disorder, and I came out and I just didn't know what to do with my life. I felt I was, you know, like one of those moments where you're at a complete crossroads. And my sister actually suggested that I'd go and, you know, have a few weeks holiday, you know, go away, you know, have to sort of convalesce. So I had this old friend I knew in Australia, and so I went to stay with him for what was supposed to be a 3-week holiday, and you know, I just ended up staying. He suggested that we make a record and that I don't catch the plane back to the UK and go and get a proper job. And so I ended up staying. And to be honest, I just sort of, you know, fell in love with the place, and I didn't want to go back to London. I wanted to be out on this farm out in the Australian bush, despite the snakes, because I had a really bad snake phobia. But which I had to overcome. So that just shows how much I really loved the place where we were.
Was the gentleman in question, was that Christian Dunham?
Yeah. So we ended up getting together, and so he's now my partner in crime, and he's you know, we run our own record label together, and we've made these four.
That's right. It's called Shack 2.
Yeah, and it's called Shack 2 Records because our house in Australia is a shack number 2 on the goat farm. There's a shack number 1, and ours is shack number 2. And shack 2 was built by Christian, actually, and he didn't have any money, so he had to use all recycled materials, which is why the walls are made out of rendered potato sacks. And it's built, the whole shack's built around sort of massive tree trunks. You can see some pictures of it on my website.
So it was real show business glitz then? Real nice
yeah,
5-star.
It was very glamorous. No hot water, ants
really?
everywhere, spiders everywhere. And it was pretty rough and ready, but I loved it.
Did you? That really sort of helped you with your music as well,
yeah,
didn't it?
It helped me with my music, and I think it helped me mentally as well, just that amount of sunshine. We're in the southeast Queensland, in the hills behind the Sunshine Coast, and literally there's something like 340 days a year of sunshine. And I just found the depression went. I just was so much happier there, and it inspired. I found it really inspiring for my music. Christian built me my own little yurt up the bank from the shack under some avocado trees, and I used to sit in there writing songs, and it was just a very healthy lifestyle. We were pretty self-sufficient. I had a huge veggie garden. We had fruit trees in the orchard. We had, I was making cheese. We set up we took over his mother's cheese business to finance our music. So I spent part of the week making cheese and part of the week sending out emails for gigs and writing songs and stuff. So it was a lovely time.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask this show's stupid question. I normally find one every week. What made you come back from Australia?
Well, it was just pure chance, actually. We used to come over here to do gigs. Like I say, we'd make and sell enough cheese to finance a new album and finance some plane tickets. And we came over in 2007 to do a 3-month tour of pubs and clubs in the UK. And basically, we did a gig at a folk club in Bournemouth, and somebody who saw us play there bought 2 CDs, and he sent one of them with a box of chocolates to a producer at Radio 2. And I must have been the chocolates that did it, because the next minute they played one of my songs, and I get this phone call out of the blue from the manager of the Waterboys saying, would I like to cancel our tickets back to Australia, because we were leaving literally a few days later, and instead go on tour with Don McLean. So, in a tour which would end up at the Royal Albert Hall. So obviously I thought long and hard about this for about 10 seconds and then said yes. And a few weeks later found myself on the stage in front of 4,000 people at the Royal Albert Hall.
Wow.
Which was amazing. And then I got a deal, and then we got more tours, and we just ended up staying. And I've got to say, for the first 2 years, it was really, really hard. I was so homesick. We spent a very long, dark winter in London, and I missed the shack, and I missed Australia so much. But we'd actually left, intending to be away for 3 months, and we went back 2.5 years later, find everything covered in dust, and it was really surreal.
Yeah, because was the Royal Albert Hall, is that the biggest concert biggest gig you've ever done?
Yeah. I mean, all the gigs with Don McLean were in the big concert halls.
Oh, that must be amazing.
So, all around the UK. But the biggest gig was at the Albert Hall. Yeah,
because you played with some sort of quite big names: Eric Bibb, Paul Brady, Glenn Tilbrook, and
I did
Roddy
a tour
Frame.
with Glenn. Yeah, that was really good fun.
Was it? Because I remember him from Squeeze, and I think a lot of our listeners will remember him from Squeeze. And Roddy Frame you played with as well.
Yeah, Roddy that was a lovely tour. He's such a nice man. We had a great time.
That's good. And then you also played with somebody I think a lot of our listeners will know, Dennis Lockery, from the lead singer of Dr. Hook.
That's right. Yeah, I did a 7-month tour with Dennis year before last, which was fantastic. We played pretty much nearly every theatre in the country. And, again, I mean, really nice guy. I had a great time on that tour.
And did you actually get to sing with him, or did you just support him? Or
no, I was just opening for him every night. Yeah, so, but it basically was pretty much the whole of 2011 I was on the road with him. And, it was really good fun. He's a great guy.
Do you enjoy the sort of the travelling, the gigs, and the travelling around? Is that
I love it.
You do?
Love it. You get in a sort of routine of doing it, and it's I mean, I just really enjoy it, and I really enjoy meeting different people every night. Because when you go out and do your CDs and stuff in the break, you're meeting so many people all the time, And every venue, you know, especially on that tour, you know, every venue we turned up to was another lovely theatre. I mean, that's basically why I'm in the UK and not in Australia.